I know some of you have been displeased about the appearance of your artificial Christmas tree. They don't seem real, they seem somehow manufactured or plastic. However, I'm here today to help you with that, to make your tree appear a little more real, a little more Christmas-like. Check it out. In front of you, you will see all the tools and products necessary to make your tree appear much more real and Christmas-like. You have your basic measuring device, as well as your craft wire. Also, you'll find a drill and several pine cones. Now, as you can see, I selected to go with a 19 gauge wire. It's strictly a galvanized steel wire. The galvanization is not necessary for this particular product, unless of course you're going to use your Christmas tree outside. The first step in this process is to measure out a section of wire the size that you think you'll need. I'm going with 2.5 inches. Now in this case I want to cut the wire at a bit of an angle in order to give that end of that wire just a little bit of a sharp pointed section at the end of the wire. I want to straighten the wire up as much as I can. Of course I'll never have it perfectly straight, but this is not necessary. It would be convenient, however, not completely necessary. Once the wire is mostly straight, I get a drill with a very tight chuck on there, and I simply open that up as you would to insert any drill bit, and insert the piece of wire directly into the drill. And you don't really need to tighten it all that much, so if you don't use the key, that's okay. Now notice the end is still swinging around a little bit. You can hold it and continue to straighten that a little bit to try to make it a little more precise. The next step is to pick out a pine cone that will match the part of the tree that you're working with. If you're working with the lower branches, you want the larger pine cones. On my tree, I've pretty much completed the lower branches, so I'm going to begin to look at some of the medium and the smaller size pine cones in order for this process. That's a beautiful pine cone there. I think I'll use this one. Now, as I mentioned before, you should probably wear some gloves as you do this process, because in the event that the piece of wire veers off of its course, you may end up impaling your finger with the piece of wire, which is no fun. You take the drill and you find the center of the pine cone. Notice in the center of that pine cone, there appears to be a darker area. So the idea is to put that wire right on that darker piece of area and start with a light pressure on your pine cone and pseudo drill bit. Notice it's pretty flexible, so you want to be careful when you insert this into the pine cone. You start off at a nice slow speed, which this drill simply doesn't have. This drill is either on or off. If you had a variable speed drill, I would recommend using that. But you start off with light pressure. And insert the piece of wire like so. Once it's applied itself all the way into the depths of the pine cone, you go ahead and release the pine cone, and now you have a pine cone with the piece of wire sticking out of it. Notice it actually has some pretty good resistance there. Then you go to your artificial branch and you'll wrap that wire around the branch. Once you have your pine cones ready, the next step is to wire them onto the tree. As you can see, some of them have been done already. Here's one I did yesterday. Here's one that I did yesterday as well. We're going to put on a couple of these so you can see how that process will work really well. Well, I've identified my target location, and I've identified the pine cone that I'm going to use. It's just simply a matter of finding an appropriate branch and then wrapping the wire of the pine cone around there. You have to be careful not to poke holes into your fingers. You just simply give that wire a good wrap right around the branch, and be careful of your fingers. Adjust the branches a little bit so it looks a little more natural. And voila! As you can see, it adds a much more authentic appearance to the Christmas tree. It makes me feel more Christmassy. How about you? As you can see, adding pine cones to an artificial tree gives it a much more lifelike appearance. There's a homemade ornament that my friend Kevin made for me to add to my tree. Well, there you have it. You can enhance the appearance of your artificial Christmas tree as well. Simply drill some wires into the pine cones. Be careful. Don't drill the wires into your fingers. I highly recommend you use gloves. I am not responsible for any injury incurred while imitating or emulating the actions on this video. I hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and Prosperos Años.
I wanna go play hide and seek. I wanna go and bounce the moon just like